News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here on a Tuesday. We've got a good show. You're watching TV. We're going to talk about TV this morning. We're lucky we have some folks that can join us on this program that I think know so much about TV. They can literally answer any question for you about a favorite program, you know, how shows decide where they go, what shows are being made, all of that. We're going to get into that, and you can just think about a question that you want to ask during the program. We'll get the phone number up there, 737-7587. It says TV Biz, your favorite shows, but it's going to be a larger picture, kind of going back a ways into some of the TV in the 70s, and as it leads to the 80s to where we are today. We'll go over a lot of that and take your phone calls with our two guests this morning, who I think are very interesting, and there is a lot of TV knowledge in the studio right now. And it's not with me, it's with these two. First of all, you'll recognize my good friend, way over there, Mark Binda, our programming director. Good morning, sir.
Be with you again, not in September.
No. Well, you know, last time, you know, you came on with this gentleman who I'll introduce in a moment, and it was a great show because the two of you are so knowledgeable. But of course, Mark is our programming director here, so you have questions about what we air, that's for Mark. With us also is Jim McKairnes, another good friend of mine, very good friend of my wife Deb as well. And Jim's with us. He is a former executive at CBS and an author and a professor, and you live in Nashville now.
I do.
All in the Decade is your book, which is just, I'll show it. We don't mind plugging the book, and we'll get an ISO shot at some point over here on this. But tell us, one reason you're on is this book today, and it is about the 70s TV, right? It is about 70s TV. It's based on a course that I taught and created at Temple University when I taught there in 2013 and 14. I just wanted the students in this communication school that we were part of to know the background of the communications business they were getting into. Because as I told them, I think, you know, the history of anything is interesting if you want to play a part of it, whether it's your family or your government or baseball or television. And a lot of them rightfully are referring to a golden age of television, and I wanted them to have a little perspective about what that actually referred to, what came before what we consider the golden age today. So you would say the 70s was the very first golden age? I introduced them as the golden age being the 50s, and then I got kind of anal on them because I said nothing really is golden until it's over. So I think it's a little premature to refer to the golden age as the golden age. But the 50s has since been referred to as the golden age. And as we got into the history, I told them about how there was so much revolution in the 70s that led to what became today's golden age. That a lot of what they like and a lot of the advancements of today are based on what their building blocks were in the 1970s. All right, and I think a lot of our viewers today will remember a lot of these shows. Some won't, but maybe they'll be interested to hear about them. What were your favorite shows of the 70s? And I want Mark to weigh in too. Yeah.
70s, All in the Family, of course. I mean, that was, you had to watch that every Saturday night at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. MASH, probably. Yeah. My dad and my grandfather were huge cop detective shows. So in my house, it was always Kojak and Cannon and Y50 and Barnaby Jones, all that stuff. Yeah.
So I remember all of
the sitcoms of the 70s. Of course, I was in high school, grammar school at the time. So like you had to watch Happy Days, you had to watch Mork and Mindy and all that stuff. Yeah, it was a rule.
Well, it was almost. That was truly appointment TV back then. I remember with Happy Days. Yes, you hit with that. How about you, Jim?
I guess I grew up in Mark's house because with my father, we watched Hawaii Five-0, Barnaby Jones, and the Streets of San Francisco. That was appointment television with my father. Yeah. And of course, he stopped watching after 4 years after Michael Douglas left the shows because it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, with Richard Hatch.
Yeah, it just wasn't the same.
And not the survivor Richard Hatch.
Right, the first Richard Hatch.
Yeah, okay.
Who went on to Battlestar Galactica, who I'm sure I was going to say that's probably a show you more relate to. The sitcoms, I guess, would be All in the Family. Maude made me very nervous because my mother said we couldn't watch it, so it made me nervous to watch Maude. Yeah. It was very controversial. And Mary Tyler Moore Show, of course, and some of its spin-offs, and then Barney Miller and Soap towards the latter half of the decade when the revolution really exploded.
Okay, so I guess part of it for today, I mean, we'll take phone calls on some of those shows if you have some you want to touch on, but I know we also have a younger audience as well that maybe is hearing these and wondering maybe how they relate to TV today. I mean, maybe we can just at least lay that out and see where we go with the program from there. But as a CBS executive, you were working at CBS from when to when?
93 to 2010.
93 to 2010, okay. And so did you see, and maybe can you lay out for us how what happened in the 70s maybe has brought us to where we are today? Are there connections?
Well, even in a general sense, just comedies that were sad.
Okay.
There was a lot of, that's a lot of, or ironic comedy, I suppose, but dramatic comedy began in the 70s. Also, drama that made you laugh, or irony, or lack of resolution, or anti-heroes. That whole what happens next, as opposed to something that's wrapped up in an hour, those building blocks are in the 70s. But what I used to tell my students is, if you go back and listen to some of the sitcoms that are done in front of a live audience, and most of them were, which I think is one of the biggest differences in television today. That's a key element, I feel, to the success of comedy, is to understand that there's a live audience, like theater, appreciating
I think a lot of people forget that.
They forget that, and they think it's soundtrack, and I agree soundtrack can be a bit
Well, don't they have
annoying.
the applause signs that would...
Some live audience is sweetened, yes, but if you can... If you watch a live sitcom, or I'm sorry, a sitcom taped in front of a live audience in the 70s, the point being, you could hear, and in the 80s, you could hear the audience say, are they really saying what I think they're saying, or are they really getting away with what I think they're getting away with in terms of references and content? And that's how you know that there's a revolution in place, because they really can't believe the TV is going there. And then it did continue to go there. Up to and including the last Rubicon that I think it crossed, which is Seinfeld's episode about self-gratification, and how they did an entire...
Master of my domain.
Right. How they did an entire episode without mentioning the word. But those shows of the 70s that sort of just created templates that changed. Dramas, comedies, even movies. Although there are still some... Like, there's a movie that aired in 1974 on TV that I showed in my class in 2014, which was 40 years later. How's my math? And the students recoiled from this scene. It was 3 minutes long.
You're talking about Born Innocent? Oh my God. Linda Blair.
Yeah.
Linda Blair. It's actually even inappropriate to talk about on television today, the content, because it's about a young girl who was violated, a sexual assault in a shower by a group of other teenage girls, and they used a plunger. And it was fairly graphic, even for 2014. And when, I don't mean to laugh, but I smile at the thought of today what you can see on your smartphone. And the students in class in 2014 said that doesn't belong on television. And this was 40 years after it aired.
That's unbelievable. With it, why? So why? Because
it was graphic.
I know that. I understand how horrible that was. But I mean, you're right about the stuff we see these days. Heck, on some of the soap operas, nothing to that level. But I mean, boy.
Well, this left very little to the imagination. You have to see it to.
I did not watch that movie when it happened, but I remember the next day in school, everybody was talking about it.
And it changed television. As I write in the book, it actually got the government involved. Parent organizations, senators, representatives, politicians, local and national, petitioned the FCC. The FCC ended up creating the Family Hour, which was derided and didn't last very long. And it was an attempt to curb what you can watch in prime time, which is at night. It was an attempt to curb it. And you could only air family-friendly programming in the first hour of prime time, all because of this Linda Blair movie called Born Innocent, ending up with a petition to the FCC, and then the Supreme Court got involved. It was very complicated. But TV changed because of this one scene. And ironic that college students,
even all those years
40
later,
years
still find that. Well, then you can see why.
Male and female, essentially saying that doesn't belong on television, and they actually didn't. They weren't wild about me showing it, even with my disclaimer in front of the class.
Are there programs now that you'll sometimes watch, Jim, where you say to yourself, that doesn't belong on TV?
In terms of it's bad, or it's just over the top?
Oh, there's plenty of bad shows, and but I mean, in terms of things that are content-wise, just
Today?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
I can think of, and I won't detail it, but I can think of one scene in the first season of Girls, which I made a habit of not watching very much, HBO's Girls.
Okay.
With Adam Driver in bed with his girlfriend or just a woman, and it was pretty over the top as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, Mark, you see the new programs that come out, and like for instance, some of the very popular shows on this, Criminal Minds, okay, which has been on. We were just talking before the show how I guess they're coming into the last season, right?
Next season.
But I mean, and as you said, and I agree, there's a lot of good acting on there, but there's some pretty disturbing subject matter and visuals in that.
Yeah.
How, that line, and I know Jim, you were at CBS when that became a very popular show. What do you think as you watch that evolve? I mean, do you ever see that? And I guess the viewers are okay with it.
I guess the first show to last that long. There's always been this kind of fascination, right or wrong, with serial killers and that kind of thing. And I think, again, as we were talking off air, I think the cast on that show is so good that, people tune in for those characters to some extent. But yeah, I mean, CBS almost is the crime network. I mean, they CSI, NCIS. Now we're going to spin off FBI next season. So it's cottage industry. Law and Order really started it for the crime procedurals.
Yeah, people do. Listen, we'll take a break. It's interesting, though, in so many of these programs, you can see a dead body in the program. I mean, it's a TV show. We could never show that in the TV news at night. If we get video of that sometimes, we're not going to show that. It's just interesting, that line between reality and make-believe. We'll take a break. We've got some phone calls. The number is 737-7587. As you see, these two guys, if you want to, hey, can we do 6 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon?
We can try.
Can you stump? Oh, we're going to stump him. We'll try. I've tried for years and I can't. The number is 737-7587. TV Biz, your favorite shows, questions about TV with Jim McKairnes and Mark Binda right after this. Stay with us.